In the heart of Europe, precisely in Italy, a land long known for centuries as the center of the Catholic faith and home to the Vatican, an extraordinary event took place. This event not only shocked the Italian society, but also shook the world. Thousands of nuns who had dedicated their lives behind the monastery walls decided to embrace Islam. At first, this story began with restlessness of the heart. Many of them had lived for years in the silence of prayer, isolating themselves from the noise of the outside world. They sought tranquility, peace, and answers to the deepest questions about God, life, and the purpose of their existence. Yet, over time, they felt that something was missing. They read the Holy Scriptures every day, yet the great questions remained unanswered. Why must the Almighty God be manifested in human form? Why must original sin be carried by every child born into the world? And why, despite praying for so many years, did their hearts still feel an unrest that could not be healed? In the silence of the convent, some nuns secretly began to open new horizons. They read literature about other religions, especially Islam. At first, all of this was done in secrecy, afraid of being considered apostates or unfaithful to their sacred calling. Yet, behind those silent walls, they discovered verses of the Quran that touched their hearts. Say, He is Allah, the one and only, Allah, the eternal refuge. He neither begets nor is born, and there is none comparable to Him. Quran Surah Al-Ikhlas, 1-4, 2. Those verses were so simple, yet so profound. Not convoluted, not confusing, not against reason. One by one, the nuns began to feel that Islam gave the answers they had long been seeking. Islam presented an image of God so pure, without intermediaries, without incarnation into creatures, without hierarchy. They found beauty in the words, La ilaha illallah. There is no God but Allah. The words were simple, yet they struck their hearts like lightning, awakening them from a long slumber. At first, only a handful of nuns were interested. They secretly discussed, exchanged translated copies of the Quran, listened to Quranic recitations through hidden phones, and even prayed in Islamic prostration inside their small rooms without anyone knowing. Yet the peace they felt was so powerful that it could no longer be hidden. The whispers of the heart grew louder, eventually moving many other nuns to seek as well. From 10, it became hundreds. From hundreds, it became thousands. A turning point came when a Muslim professor from the University of Rome was invited to give an academic lecture on comparative religion. In that forum, he gently explained the concept of Tawheed, about the prophets honored in both Islam and Christianity, and about Mary, the holy figure who even has an entire surah dedicated to her in the Quran. Many nuns wept in emotion as they listened. They realized for the first time that Mary, the figure they had revered since childhood, was actually honored more highly in Islam than in their own faith. That night, many nuns cried until late. Tears fell not out of sadness, but out of joy, that God had finally led them to the pure truth. The climax came on a bright morning in a large hall outside Rome, where thousands of nuns gathered. They stood in their long white garments that had always been a symbol of devotion. But that day, their faces radiated a different light. There was relief, peace, and happiness that could not be described in words. An imam stood before them, his voice trembling as he led the declaration of faith. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. In unison, thousands of nuns recited those words. Tears burst forth, crying of joy echoed throughout the hall. They were no longer nuns, they were now Muslim sisters. Some immediately removed the crosses from their necks, replacing them with simple veils provided by the organizers. Some kissed the Quran for the first time with deep love. Others prostrated for a long time on the floor, experiencing the true peace they had never felt in their entire lives. The news spread quickly, shaking Italy and even the whole of Europe. International media covered it. Church leaders were left bewildered, while Muslims across the world fell into prostration of gratitude. Many could not believe. How could the land that was the heart of Catholicism give birth to thousands of converts from among nuns? Yet the reality could not be denied. One of them said in a trembling voice during an interview, "For decades I searched for God, but only today do I truly feel His closeness. Islam is not just a religion, but a way of life that truly brings peace to my heart." Now, thousands of former nuns live as Muslim women. They are learning to read the Quran, studying Arabic, and beginning to wear the hijab with pride. Many have become drivers of dawah, spreading their stories so that more people may come to know Islam. From the silence of the convent, they have now discovered a new world full of light. From empty prayers, they have found sincere prostration. From endless restlessness, they have found true tranquility. And it all began with one noble statement, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. The story of thousands of Italian nuns who found guidance is living proof that the light of truth cannot be blocked by walls, traditions, or even centuries of history. Guidance is the absolute right of Allah, and He grants it to whomever He wills. What happened in Italy is not merely a social phenomenon or a historical event, but a sign that Islam will continue to shine even in the most unexpected places. From behind the silent prayers of the nuns, Allah revealed the straight path. From restless hearts, unwavering faith was born. That day, the world witnessed how thousands of souls surrendered themselves completely to Allah. They left behind doubts, abandoned confusion, and attained true happiness. And now, from Italy, the center of the Catholic world, resounds the same words once proclaimed by the Prophet and his companions 14 centuries ago. La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. Words that unite, that bring peace, and that save. Words that will never fade, even as the ages continue to pass.
Silvia Costanza Romano, a young woman from Italy, never imagined that her journey as a humanitarian activist would lead her to the greatest transformation of her life, becoming a Muslima. In 2018, Silvia, who was then only 23 years old, joined a social aid organization operating in East Africa. Driven by a spirit of humanitarianism and concern for underprivileged children, she chose to serve as a volunteer in a remote village in southeastern Kenya. Silvia carried out her daily activities with full dedication. She taught, helped distribute food, and became a friend to the village children who always welcomed her with laughter. However, that happiness and tranquility did not last long. On the night of November 20th, 2018, a group of armed men stormed the volunteers' residence. In an instant, Silvia was kidnapped and taken to an unknown location. News of her abduction shocked Italy and the international community. The Italian government immediately took diplomatic steps, working toward her rescue and involving various parties. However, months passed with no definite news. The public began to lose hope. On the other hand, Silvia's family continued to pray, waiting for her return. Meanwhile, in a place far from civilization, Silvia lived in uncertainty. She was under the supervision of an armed group believed to be linked to the militant group Al-Shabaab. Her days were filled with fear and silence. She didn't know if she would live to see the sunrise. But amid all the suffering and isolation, something extraordinary happened. Silvia began to observe the lives of those guarding her. Although they were her captors, they did not physically abuse her. They even continued to feed her and maintain certain boundaries in their treatment. She noticed how they prayed 5 times a day, woke up in the middle of the night to pray, and read their holy book with deep devotion. Curiosity grew within her. Who was the God they worshipped? Why were they so calm, even in such a difficult life? What was in the book they read every day? Through observations and small conversations, Sylvia began to learn about the teachings of Islam. There was no coercion, no harsh indoctrination. She simply watched and felt, and gradually her heart opened. In the limitations she experienced, she found the time to reflect more deeply. She began to realize that there had been an emptiness in her life she had never noticed. And in that isolation, she felt as though she had found something she had long been searching for: the meaning of life. Until finally she made a major decision. Silently in her heart, Sylvia embraced Islam. She recited the Shahada in an unusual setting, without a crowd of witnesses, without a grand mosque, but full of sincerity and peace. After 18 months of captivity, Sylvia was finally released and returned to Italy in May 2020. As she stepped off the military plane at Ciampino Airport in Rome, many people awaited with tears of emotion and joy. But there was one thing that immediately caught public attention. Sylvia was now wearing a hijab. News that Sylvia had embraced Islam spread rapidly. Italian and international media were in an uproar. Some welcomed the news with respect and admiration, but many others mocked her, accusing her of having Stockholm Syndrome or even being brainwashed. But Sylvia remained calm through it all. In her interview with the media, she clearly stated that her decision to embrace Islam was purely of her own volition. There was no coercion, no pressure. She recited the Shahada with full awareness and deep conviction. "I chose Islam voluntarily. I found a peace I had never felt before," she said. Sylvia is now known as Aisha Romano, a name that marks her spiritual rebirth. She began a new life, not as a symbol of controversy, but as a woman who had endured great trials and found light in the midst of darkness. Her story of Hijra is living proof that guidance can come from paths we never expected. Even in events that seem like disasters, there may lie extraordinary mercy from Allah. From a kidnapped volunteer to a steadfast Muslimah, Sylvia Romano is a reflection that the path to light often begins in the deepest darkness, and guidance belongs to whomever He wills.